I was thinking when you were in the market, that
Yeah.
was and I've been in that market, and it
Yeah.
is pretty crazy
Yeah.
and loud, and
Yeah.
you had people coming up to you, and that one woman in particular
Yes.
who came up to you
Yeah.
and spoke about Nigeria,
Yeah.
the state of Nigeria. Was that a surprise? How did you?
Well, yes, I mean, I was quite surprised because, as I say, most people were letting us get on with wandering around. No one was making a big thing about us being there. But so it came completely out of the blue, and she obviously was very, very angry about the situation. But interestingly enough, a lot of people were sort of moving her out of the way, as though they were slightly embarrassed. Not that Nigerians do embarrassment, I don't think, do they? Perhaps you do, but I didn't see it obviously manifest.
Yeah.
But there was an awkwardness and a feeling that she shouldn't be bothering us with
It was passion, and I think Yorubas are passionate people. I think you felt that passion throughout.
The Yoruba, they're the southern.
Yeah, careful. There's a lot of Yorubas in here.
Yeah, no, lovely. Nice to see you. Yeah. Love you. And I know we'll get on to this later, but they're in the way they behave and their attitude to life very different from the Hausa in the north.
And you tell me what you felt the difference was, because they are very different. I would say they're very different. I think people in here would say they're very different. But what did you feel the difference was between the north and the south?
Well, the Hausa seemed quieter, more wrapped up in their own sort of worlds, less animated somehow. Maybe it's the heat or whatever. But I mean, and quieter, just a little more sort of inside themselves rather than the Yoruba, who just everything was given out there. You know, you had to get everything you were thinking about out of your system, and it was, which I loved that actually. It was a great surprise to me how refreshing it felt to be there. And, you know, in England, where we're so sort of deferential and careful about how we ask for things, you know, excuse me, could you possibly pass another cucumber sandwich? I mean, the Nigerians don't talk like that. They say, hey, man, what are you doing eating that? Shit. No, and they don't say that. But they would be very vocal about everything. And it was great. So straight away you got to the point of whatever you wanted to ask somebody.
Yeah.
And also very articulate, lots to say.
That was the interesting and really funny exchange when you were on Makoko Island and you were getting into the boat, because although to an outsider, when you first look, you think people are arguing, that's just the way you can see that actually they're smiling.
Yes.
They're not arguing, they're just, it's banter.
Yeah, well, a lot of long poles being swung around and all that, but no, I could tell, and that exactly what you say, the banter. Once you realise it's terribly liberating for us all uptight Englishmen.
And tell me about Makoko Island, because you've travelled, you've been to many places, I would say, and gone into places that even as a Nigerian, I haven't done. I mean, I haven't been into Makoko Island. Of course, everyone knows where it is.
But that's interesting, because I can back the question back to you. Why would you go there, particularly? I mean, it's 200,000 people there, all living on the poverty line. It's very tough. I don't feel there's any reason for other Nigerians to go there.
Maybe for a reality check. What did you feel when you were there? Was it a reality check for you, that a reminder that people are less well off?
Yeah, but I mean, you know, again, I didn't feel these are poor people who are also passive and, you know, resentful. They're getting on with life. I mean, it was kind of put on slight filters on your spectacles. You could be in Venice, you know. It's basically nice canals there and people going on. They have boats that look like gondolas and they're big sticks and all that. And then you look again and you realise these are just sort of wooden shacks made of bits of driftwood. They're not the palaces of the Grand Canal. But there was something of the same feeling of people living on the water and very skillfully guiding their boats through very elegantly. They're wonderful movers and all that. But I suppose it's only really comes to the full impact of what Makoko is like is when you go to the school. And I mean, I think there are 2 schools, something like that, in the whole of Makoko. and a lot of children who just won't be going to school at all. And yet you see the pictures there, and the eagerness in their eyes, and they're absolutely jam-packed in there. School sizes, wouldn't be allowed in this country, sort of thing. And they're just there because they want to be in school, they want to learn, they've got their uniforms, and they were terrific when I was burbling on about.
They know the value of
maps.
education.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And they liked you as a teacher.
Well, I always do my teacher bit. That's also wherever I go to these places, I turn up in the school. And that was, in North Korea was the earliest one. They all said, "Hey, where Michael from? I'm from England. Yeah. Do you know England? Yes. Who do you know in England? Yeah. You know the Queen? No. I thought, well, we can't. If we start that. If they don't know the Queen, they're not going to know sort of Van Gascoigne.
So you went from Makoko, that was such a contrast to go from there to the nightclubs.
Yeah.
You seem to be getting on very well with that young lady.
Well, she was a jolly, very nice person and good fun. I mean, you either get on, you have to get on with people in Nigeria very quickly. They just do. They don't say, oh, you're an interesting person or something like that. It's just there in the way they behave, her body language. And she was quite interesting because at the beginning, she was a little bit sort of frazzled from a very busy day on the music business and all that. And a bit weary. And then just after, it didn't take more than about 3 or 4 minutes before she snapped into this, great to see you, I'm going to tell you all these wonderful things. And we were drinking, as you could see, not heavily, but...
A good cocktail.
Yeah, as a Negroni or something like that, very well-mixed cocktail. But she was, I mean, again, something I found throughout Nigeria, although she was really jolly and friendly and jokey, there was, when she starts talking about the country and the situation in the country, she seemed to have great reservations, and a lot of people did. And I thought it was at least healthy that the people of Nigeria themselves were the ones who were criticizing Nigeria more than anybody else. And she certainly was like that.
And I know in your travel programs you make a really conscious effort, and you did in this one as well, to talk to people from the country rather than the expats.
Oh yeah,
Talking to Nigerians.
Never talk to expats.
Never
They're the worst. I mean, they are a little bit because they're England doubled. They've gone abroad because they're in a strange place. They either absorb the place, or else they become actually doubly English in order to sort of preserve whatever is Englishness. But no. Obviously, the whole point is to talk to people in the country. And I mean, North Korea, it was very difficult to talk to anybody. But it did mean that the few conversations we had in North Korea opened the door just a little bit. And so there was a kind of tension there. And I think we broke through on 1 or 2 occasions. In Iraq was the same team were with me in Iraq. And there it was a little easier in certain parts of Iraq. In southern Iraq, no one really wanted to talk to us at all. So to get to Nigeria and find that people not only want to talk, but they speak English, it was great and gave a much richer dimension to the journey, I think. Really did.
And they're telling their own stories in their own words.
Yeah,
so.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they're not dissembling. They're not trying to pretend, that they're saying something but meaning something else. There didn't seem to be a huge amount of irony there. You say what you want to say, and you say it directly. And that kind of directness I found refreshing.
And no sort of deference because you were because you were a white man. You think they were very honest with you and very straightforward with you.
Yeah, and they looked after me quite well. They thought this old bloke is completely lost. He's in this area with a boat, doesn't know where he's going. But they kind of looked after me in the end, not too obviously, but they wanted to make sure that I was okay. But it reminded me a little bit, Oyibo, in when we filmed in Ethiopia, we went to the Blue Nile Falls, and some children from the local village were guides taking us a mile or so from the village to the falls themselves, which are quite spectacular. And there's a lot of fighting between the children, and I heard one of them grab my arm and said, "No, he's my foreigner." So they were looking after me.
Looking after you.
They're foreigner.
Oh. So from there you went on to Badagry,
Mm.
a very emotional place for
Yeah.
Nigerians.
Yes.
And I could feel that you understood that emotion while you were there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the lady I was with, she was very vocal. She knew an awful lot about the slave trade and talked about it very well. So there was no getting away from what she was telling me, nor did I particularly, want to get away. I know a certain amount about the slave trade, and I've filmed in Senegal too, where the same sort of area where people left. But it was the scale really of the departures. The slaves were taken from that beach in Nigeria, something like 3 million over 200 years. I mean, absolutely stunning. And also, I think it was just the contrast between the beauty of the beach. I mean, that would be on brochures anywhere else in the world. This nice, beautiful beach, lovely, beautiful palm trees. You could see there all the sand and everything. And yet, it had been a sort of terrible, terrible trading ground for the worst kind of oppression. So that made me I felt a bit uncomfortable there. Well, I said uncomfortable. And you try and take it in and kind of put yourself in the place of those people who are being driven along. And as she described them, they were almost senseless by the end, really.
Yeah.
They must be just pushed in like zombies. So there was a great brutality.
Yeah, I stood on that beach myself actually, and I'm
Yeah.
sure many other people, Nigerians here, have as well. And you're right, it's that contrast between the beauty of it, because it is a beautiful beach, isn't
Yes. I mean,
what happened there?
I remember it reminded me of when I was young and teenager and all that, and we used to go to Suffolk and holidays there, and you would go through a sort of landscape a bit like that, small bushes and heathland, and once you came to the sea, you'd be running. You really want to get there fast. That's what I want, and into the sea. And this time I was just moving more slowly and knowing, what I was going to see was what they said, the point of no return.
It was very important to include that in the film.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we discussed this with Neil, my directors there, and generally felt you've got to confront this, and there's no way of avoiding it, nor would we want to avoid it. And at the same time, you've just got to sort of, you can't change anything now. It happened, and you've just got to somehow admit that it happened, talk about what happened, and make a mark there.
Okay. And I think the thing that struck me, I've been lucky enough, I've seen 2 and have read about the 3rd one, is that even as a Nigerian, I realised that you have managed to go to more places in Nigeria than I have in my 60 years. Yeah. I mean, you've had amazing access.
Well, really? Well, you say that.
Yeah,
you would know.
Absolutely.
What sort of places would you not have been to?
I mean, for one, you've been on that new railroad. So yes. The train you've been down, which is something I still haven't done. So, and what was that like? Well,
that was a bit anonymous actually, because it wasn't really, apart from the fact it was painted very, wonderful sort of surreal painting on the coaches, but actually on it was fairly quiet. Buying the ticket was a great experience, which is I think in the next program.
Yeah.
Because you're not allowed to reserve seats or buy tickets until you actually get there. So it's actually catering for chaos, which takes place. And then there's scanners to put luggage through, and the scanners don't work all the time, and people just avoid them. It was absolute chaos. When you get on the train, it's quite well organised, because the train was built by the Chinese, sort of the railway, and the stations.
And all the stations.
Yes, exactly. So that was the Chinese influence, which seems quite strong in Nigeria. In infrastructure, is that right?
It is, and getting stronger. And just to start, can we talk a little bit about the second series? There were things in that, like the boxing. If you could paint a picture for people here of that, before we get to you meeting the Emir, the boxing. I actually rewound that and watched that again. That was incredible.
Yeah, Dembe boxing, which is, it's kind of bare knuckle boxing, except that on one hand they have a sort of a bandage, or they have some fabric which is then wrapped around, and so you've got it's your hand. One hand becomes a club, really, bulging club, and that's the one which they hit with. The other one is just to maneuver you around and get your position, but you hit with this hand there. And music plays. There's a band there, very noisy, sort of urging people on. They're all having a smoke anyway, so it's kind of quite strange situation. But it is something that's I think it's traditional, this kind of boxing, and it was very much where we went in Kano. It was supplied there by the local authorities to bring younger children, give kids something to do. And there was a discipline to it, and you're trained, and there are moves you can make and moves you are not allowed to make. So it seemed a way of getting the younger sort of unemployed people from Kano off the streets.
Much the way that boxing.
Yeah. Yes.
is here.
And I've seen it in many places. I've seen it in Brazil, particularly in some of the favelas there in Brazil. Exactly the same sort of thing, because these kids are brought up fighting, so they've got certain instinct to fight. But if you can get them to use the fighting creatively and make something out of the fighting and have rules and all that, then it gives them some sense of self-worth.
Yeah,
that's the idea of it. Yeah. But it's kind of a wild thing to watch.
it was pretty wild.
Yeah,
I watched it twice and went back.
Really?
Oh my God, that was pretty crazy.
Have you ever seen it?
Never
Yeah.
before, and that's what I mean, that you've got
Yeah.
to see things that I think that I
Yeah.
didn't see. But you arrive in Kano, you're treated like a king, really, aren't you? You get there, you and the crew.
Yes.
You have this wonderful welcome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they said, well, the emir has agreed to see you, but I didn't realise they'd put on a what they call a static durbar, which is a durbar where the horsemen don't gallop for miles and fire arrows and all that. But they're all in the courtyard, and I was like sort of the king. Yes, I was had to sort of have a look at all the horses and nod and all that, and they were presented to me, and I realised I'd got it. I just wasn't. It wasn't quite right. I was wearing pretty much what I'm wearing now. It was just a sort of denim shirt and all that, and denims, and they were all in these glorious outfits.
Beautiful.
And that's something that I felt very strongly about Nigeria, is the colourfulness of the way everybody dresses. I mean, at every level, however poor you are, everyone's got wearing a fabric which you will not see replicated anywhere else. Is it like that?
Well, it's
people
interesting.
consciously try
I
and
don't
do
want to
that.
go off the subject, but we've got the Queen of Ife.
Oh, really?
who, yes, we should have applauded
Oh,
her,
right.
because we have the Queen of Ife,
Oh, right.
who is actually
Oh,
a queen in Lagos, and that,
Your Highness, yes.
she is your Royal Highness.
Wonderful to
She
see
is,
Your Royal
yes.
Highness. You see what I mean? Just marvellous. Marvellous outfit, wonderfully worn, such dignity.
And has this real interest in fabric and material. Maybe we'll ask a question later, or we'll get you to talk later. But the flamboyance of those outfits.
Yes.
Just amazing.
Yeah, everyone
The
trying to
horsemanship
quietly
as
out, and the horsemanship, and then these rather strange sort of. This was an area of the life in Nigeria I didn't really get time to go into, but the kind of mystical side of it, what it means to have nails through your tongue when you're only 15 and all that, and men sawing their heads, drawing knives over their heads, alligators.
Yeah, but do you
being
know
put on
what it
people's
made me
shoulders.
think of was the sort of the court of King James, the whatever, that's
Really?
the sort
Yeah.
of thing that
Yes,
was
it
going
was.
on, wouldn't
Yes.
it?
It seemed
it's
quite feudal, but I mean, in a little bit of English country life, and we didn't have live alligators in this country.
maybe not.
running around the place. So I was very interested. I'd like to have known a little bit more about the significance of that group.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see the horsemen were there, and there were groups of people in scarlet outfits who were hunters. They all came along. So it was feudal in that way. But that the other side made me, the self-mutilation sort of mime, if
Yes.
it was a mime.
Yes.
That made me quite interested. How much of that is in the Nigerian character? You can.
Well, it's
tell
in the
me.
history. It's in the history.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yes, I suppose, that traditionally, well, these things go back not
Yeah.
hundreds of years, but thousands of years, and it's entertainment within the king's
Yeah.
court, I imagine.
But the whole, a long time ago, I read Ben Okri's wonderful book, Famished Road.
Yes,
And that's
yeah.
all about animism and the
Spiritual.
spirits
Yes.
who live in the forest and all that.
Yeah.
That's something we don't have anymore, really.
No. But you did go to, it's the million-person church. I know that you saw about 100,000 people in one congregation.
Yeah,
So describe that. I mean, the church is such a central part
yes,
of being Nigerian,
yeah.
and especially if you're Yoruba. So
Yeah.
what did that feel like to be in that church with all those people?
Well, the church is in a sort of city. It's called Redemption City, where people come and live. They have shops, they have banks, they have garages and all that. And then at the end of the day, up at the top of the hill, there's this enormous, they're sheds really. There's no sides to them. It's just lots of roofs, like you might find in a cattle market. And they're no more luxurious than that. But they stretch for 2 kilometres. And they can get 3 million people in there at any one time. I don't know if they've ever got 3 million people in for a service. But the night we went there, it was quite a crowd. There were probably 100,000 people or something like that, and they all gathered together. And there were a lot of women of a certain age, middle-aged women and all that. And there was a woman who, well, wonderfully, I just said to her, "You going along? Do you come to this regularly?" She said, "Yes, I come. I come to, of course, it's every time because I was healed. You see, I had a bad leg and I was healed." And she showed me immediately her leg. There was some nasty gash there. And she said, "I couldn't walk, but now I can walk." And then she said, "And I can jump." And she jumps up and down, kind of really wonderful. "I can jump."
Yeah.
And in she goes and all that. So again, it was very much the Nigerian openness. Everybody's celebrating together. Nothing's embarrassing. You can roll on the floor if you want to, and sing along.
Feel the spirit.
Feel the spirit. Yeah. So all the spirit guiding them. I mean, yeah. Well, it's all very, orchestrated in the sense that there's this huge sort of wonderful sound system. And there's someone talking into it all the time, break down the wall, and it's so you can see people being sort of roused to this pitch of hysteria. And then the music plays, and you're in a shed. There's nothing else to do. Yeah, exactly. It's very. It's just that the numbers doing it at the same time. By the end, I just went along with it. I wasn't rolling on the floor or anything like that, but I was feeling this colossal energy, and that's, as I say, that's religion. That's the evangelical spirit, and it just interested me about Nigerian politics, whether that goes. That's very important because someone said, the president's wife was going to be at the service that night, and quite a lot of politicians came along. So it wasn't just ladies who could jump. There were politicians. There were quite powerful people there. So I'm sure that the politics, the economy, whatever, however Nigeria works, this religion is very much in the heart of it.
Yeah, the churches. I think people will ask you, "Oh, who's your father? What does your father do? And which church do you go to?"
Yeah.
I don't think I'm exaggerating. Someone's saying yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you go to
Churches are
church?
I do go to church.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about me.
Yeah. But that's so much more interesting because you're Nigerian.
I'm Nigerian. Yeah. But,
Yeah.
No, you're much more interesting than I am.
No, I'm not.
You are. We'll
This
have
is
an argument
ridiculous.
about this.
Hands up, please. See, not a single hand.
Of all the states, so you went from, you did 200 miles more or less down the country. Which
200
state,
Hundreds of miles.
hundreds of miles, which
Yeah.
state would you say has stuck in your mind the most? Exclude Lagos, because we know
Yeah.
that. Exclude
Yes.
Lagos, because we know
Well, Kano in the north, as we've said, because it was so different, and also it had a very, very long history. You could tell that was at the heart of the emir's celebrations. It was very much history and tradition, which I didn't see much of in Lagos, which is all about new things and new places, bigger buildings and all that. So I'm very fond of Kano. I've got nice memories of it.
Abuja, did you?
Abuja,
Mhm.
Abuja, the capital, that worked really well. The roads, weren't potholed, and the verges had been swept, and people kept their gardens and all that,
Yeah.
because it's a capital
Of course.
city, really,
Yeah.
designed by Americans, I believe.
Yeah. And it's
So-
where all the politicians.
Where the politicians are there, so it's a bit neutral as
Yeah.
far as I was concerned.
Mm.
But anyway, it was comfortable there. But I like places that are a bit more that are different and are interesting and exciting and unlike home.
Yeah.
So I quite liked.
You like things going wrong, don't you?
Um,
I'm thinking of
up to a point.
your truck or your Jeep getting
Oh,
caught
yes.
in the road. I mean,
Yes.
just tell the audience about that. That was so.
Yes, there is a sequence. The roads got very, very bad towards as we were going south of Abuja, and not just potholes. There were kind of ponds. It was like sort of little lagoons, and these huge trucks, which always worried me because they were stranded like great beached whales, half tilted over to the side. No one was coming to tow them out or anything like that.
Mm.
And we were saying, "Oh, lucky us!" But then we got stuck. And a van with all our gear in just got stuck in the mud. And you saw, I think there was a little clip in the trailer there of us trying to tow it out with the equivalent of a pair of man's braces, really. Come on, run. I mean, it's so obvious it was going to break. It was just a question of how quickly it would break. It sometimes broke even before they tied it onto the truck. So that wasn't going to work. And we were quite stuck, and it was also getting towards the end of the day. And in that part of the world, the security people get very worried because there are bandits on the roads, there are people who are going to rob you and all that sort of thing as soon as it gets dark. And in the end, the wonderful thing was a lot of children had come out of the village. And in the end, they were the ones who got the van out. But they all pushed it, you know.
Yeah.
Must have been about 20 kids all pushing it out. And that was
Yeah.
really,
And
it was
excited
wonderful.
as well,
Yeah, we all
enjoying it.
cheered at the end. They must have thought idiots, you know.
Did you eat? You ate some suya, but I'm guessing you had some jollof rice.
Yes.
Egusi soup.
Jollof rice.
Egusi?
Roti soup.
No, egusi soup. Did you have any? What did you have?
Well, we weren't able to have a lot of traditional Nigerian cooking because, you know, the thing was we're moving so fast and there aren't a lot of small restaurants, little bijou restaurants or so where you can have a nice little meal. There are a lot of fast food joints doing quite good food, but we needed that
Don't
because
tell me you went to Nigeria and ate burgers.
no, we didn't eat burgers. No, I ate snails.
Oh, you ate
One of the
snails?
fast food, yeah.
Mm,
The
good.
biggest snails
Did
I've
you like
ever
them?
seen.
Yeah, they are big. Did
No,
you like
well, it was kind of a tough snail.
Yeah, chewy.
It's very chewy. I don't know what's the point of this really, but anyway.
My
I
mum's
was
favourite.
actually later came back and I was talking to David Attenborough.
Mm.
We were talking about food or something like that. And so in Nigeria, we had snails the size of, you know,
They are quite
size of
big.
cats.
Mm.
He says, snails, yes. Oh, yes, the Nigerian snail. They're the biggest snails in the world. You ate them? I said, yeah, well, I tried to. It took me a long while. So we didn't really get the specialist food we should have done. And in hotels, you
We'll have
get
to do something about
Western
that.
food. Yeah, yes,
Okay,
thank you.
all right.
Are you inviting me for a meal?
You never know. Play your cards right.
I'll be honest, really. In the UK, and some Nigerians are quite sort of loud and brash, and you know, I've found, and occasionally meeting them, they seem to be sort of very, very pushy. I don't know. This is just. I don't mean everybody, but the sort of feeling I had. And when I went to Nigeria, very quickly I realised that I said earlier, it's just a way of presenting yourself and your case, and it's the way you talk and the way you go straight to the point. And people do talk loudly there, but I mean people talk loudly here as well. You have an evening with a bunch of scaffolders, but. So actually going to Nigeria, I learned a lot more about the Nigerians' way of expressing themselves and what was important to them and how they talk to each other, and how their attitude to me and what they were able to talk about. And I found that there was a great directness there, and they were articulate and and animated when you talk to them. They were sort of jokey. So that some of the things that you think in this country are a bit noisy and a bit sort of over the top. That's when you're in Nigeria. It's just a lot of people with a lot to say, and that's the way you go straight to the point. You speak your mind with fewer defences and deviations than you perhaps have here in this country. So yeah, I think I understood not just Nigeria better, but Nigeria's in this country.
And was your takeaway that it's a beautiful country? It's a country you'd want to go back to. It's a country you'd recommend to other people.
Yeah, it is beautiful, but we didn't see all of it, all that, and I wish I'd gone to perhaps some of the even more scenic areas. But we did see some beautiful parts of the country. The problem is that the country is not terribly well looked after. I mean, to get to these places is almost impossible. The roads are so bad, you could not have a tourist industry, really. And that worried me. And I've recently been to Costa Rica, but that's that same sort of flora and fauna and the same sort of temperatures and all that. And it's just they look after the country and make sure that tourists are well treated. And there are good hotels and the roads go and all that, which is, if you're going to have a tourist industry at all, you've got to do that. So it does seem to me that there's something holding Nigeria back there, and I don't know how they're going to fix it. I mean, it's just a huge problem, I think.
Maybe we'll get you to write to our leaders and tell them that.
Oh yeah, that would be yes, yeah, please. Yeah. Oi, lads, tell you what. Yeah. No, I mean it's got to be done. That's another thing which I found very much when we were talking to Nigerians in Nigeria and hearing Nigerians talk, is that they said, our wonderful fixer Chris said, it's got to be, Nigeria's got to sort itself out. We can't be taking money from people to improve this, improve that, foreign countries in which you're sort of held to ransom. We've got to do it ourselves, and we've got to be good at it. And they have sorry, this is going to sound very pompous, but there is the energy there, and there's the ability, and there are the skills. It just needs to be kind of coordinated. And that's why I was brought up this thing about whether Nigeria is suffering from the fact it was cobbled together from a lot of different peoples who perhaps find it difficult to get on with each other, and that was just the way the country was created. But I mean, it's on its way. It's such a huge country, and there's so huge population. This is going to be a very big player indeed.
It will, and one hopes that it will get there. It's trying to get there, and we want to attract more tourists.
Yeah.
And I better just get this right. The first one goes out tomorrow.
Yes.
And there are 3 in total.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Everyone will be there, and if they can get it on catch up if they don't.
Yeah, that's right.
And Michael Palin, thank you very much for showing us.
Thank you.